Yes.
Keep the heat down.
I'll try to pronounce it clearly.
Yeah, right. And there'll be videotapes. Pretty much the only one we're not going to record is the sewing class.
Yes.
But everything else, yes, yeah. Well, they can sew at home, but it's, you know, people, it's not really, we'll take pictures.
Sure.
But Shelley's in the
Yeah,
class too.
people are getting initiated.
Last 3 minutes
Meeting.
recorded.
Remember,
Then, you know, that's the added bonus we find,
Eric's
there may be a small
and then
attendance
some
that
lady that helps out with the tasting breakfast.
library YouTube channel, there's a lot of people.
Great.
Well, that's really neat, like,
Yeah. Oh, maybe you want them to come out of the house a little bit.
So how does this all work? This is your camera up here?
Yep, and it does. It also does closed captioning on the. Yep, it also does closed captioning, which is
You
good.
control that? Ah,
Yep, sure do. And so, a lot of businesses use it. They use the tabletop. They'll use it for Zoom meetings because it can run a Zoom. But we use it. We use Facebook Live. It goes out to the park. We do a lot of stuff outside and everything.
great.
It picks up really good audio. It picks that up really well, and it does the closed captioning on the video for people, which a lot of our people like.
And then do you keep it like in a library so people can go, like Saturday, come in and take a look at it?
What?
What you're filming?
Oh, well, so this goes on Facebook Live, and then I edit it and put it up on our YouTube channel on our website as well, and kind of do playlists for like all the programs that they can go and see. And then like for this program, and then Sundays at 2, like on the webpage, I'll put here's the whole playlist again, and we get a lot of replays.
And everybody goes through the webpage to get that.
For the YouTube, yeah, if they don't watch it on Facebook, yeah.
Great. So it's Facebook Live or copy?
It's Facebook Live,
Or
and
you
then
go to
I
YouTube.
edit it, and then I put it up on our YouTube channel, yeah.
Do you mind if I take a picture of you with your setup here?
No, that's okay, yeah, that's fine.
Because that's interesting.
Oh.
There's no rehearsal.
All right.
Okay.
So many times, so I was asked previously, what was my goal, objective of the
They
presentation?
do the same, the official business of the state, so if you hear the word they made framework, they made your major speak, they might vary their speech a little bit. But so, because I'm still working full time, so I thought you could do another year. And after that, I close it out, and see, you know, she takes a year, I take a year, whichever order. And we're gonna, we've got that time to put together programs. Because I agree enough people to want that. Remember, I sent out a questionnaire, and I
Most of the time, just
teaming up
to
together. I think we can really bring in some more enjoyment, education, support each other, yeah.
Weather's
Yeah, you know. Or we're doing charity, or doing something that.
kids
And it's nice, we have the handmade breakfast. That's, you know, also, I wanna also have the young mothers with their kids. They're having playgroups, so it's happening to do that. We could start doing more family things. Lately, I thought of it as like, we'll have these things. But I just want to celebrate. And, you know, Alice, I think, was the two of us that are putting our minds together. Reading club, a dinner club, different things we can do.
But by the same token, Colonial Beach town claims it as theirs. It's good that everybody wants to say, that's mine too. So, Colonial Beach, you have, smaller lots. We'll, have families come to visit. It's not a birthplace. With friends here, got the facilities and stuff. And they can make things up there.
Oh, and then, yeah.
Down those dirt paths, a lot safer on the city
She
street.
did, yeah.
That was a look.
Walks in the morning,
Yeah.
walk the dogs. And that's one of the goals, to make it like, look and come here and enjoy it.
Hey there. So we're gonna keep the lights off, is that the thing to do?
Yeah, if you just keep it in the middle, they can see better up front in person, but I don't need the glare here online, yeah.
Making sure.
Yeah, that's what I was doing when I was putting the lights, that's what I was doing earlier, was testing the screen.
Yeah, I assumed you had done
Yeah.
that, but then,
Yeah, I was-
Brian or somebody asked me about that, so.
Yeah, so this way I don't get a glare, but up front they still see the screen, so.
Yeah,
It's
Yeah.
good. He did such a beautiful talk. He's sitting at border, he can't reach it.
One more minute, then I'll get started.
Yeah, I started it live, so people can come on.
That's what I want to see happen too. But I said, one more year, I'm still working full time, that's what I need, I'm gonna retire at the end of next year. He's still family friends, yeah. And so, I have calls scheduled every day, so I can't really get, yeah. But if I have the year after, the year after that, I do. They're getting excited about the potential, so Nina likes to learn something at the OES meetings, and she liked when I did the presentation, so she liked when I did, yeah. So we're talking about Lonnie doing next year, and you and I collaborating together for the next couple of years to kind of move things in a positive way that we can, do a reading club or a dinner club or different things. And I think to expand out to a more of a social and educational. Yeah. All right, here we go.
Sure, it's not one of those times. Give us a call. Somebody can meet you up.
You have a number that,
So, yeah, some information.
I'm just interviewing, you're ready to go.
All right, everybody, hello, and welcome to our first program in our special Evening Whiz series here at the Lancaster Community Library. We'll get started with that in just a minute, but we have a big week coming up next week, so I thought I would highlight some of our upcoming programs here at the library. The children have a bunch of activities next week, and we'll start with Baby Garden on Monday. July 7th is the continuation of our historical theme, and we'll have brick making with Historic Christchurch. Robert Siegel from HCC will be here to help everyone make bricks, ages 6 and up. The next, also on that day, is having some engineering adventures with cool structures, and that's for ages 6 through 12. On the 8th, we will have Unearth a Story time, uncover some fun with rocks and dinosaurs. July 9th, we have 2 programs. Science Heroes is a special presenter, call it Digging It live program, all ages. And then that night is a really exciting night with Pippi Longstocking, someone we all know and love, will be Pippi, who happens to be running our tech tonight. And that is also an all ages program. We'll have lots of fun activities. Wear your wacky clothes and your crazy socks to get in the mood, and we'll have lots of fun snacks. Also that week, next week on Saturday, is our American Girls Tea Party, so ages 6 and up. and you do have to pre-register. We've got a couple programs in the Teen Center next week as well. On the 8th, on Tuesday, is our weekly series, Unearth Your Hobby. And then on the 10th is Open Mic Night. Our adult programming continues in force as well. As I mentioned, the Pippi's Anything Can Happen party will happen next Thursday, and that really is for all ages, so y'all come, should be lots of fun. And then the last program I will mention this evening is our July 16th Sip and Sew Make a Wine or Treat Bag. And Lee Taylor from So Lovely will be giving that program. We are going to limit it to 12 participants, and you will go home with a wine or treat bag. So if you enjoy sewing, come on and sign up. All right, so without further ado, I am very happy to introduce Dr. Leonard Levin. He is a retired physician who for 7 or 8 years has been a volunteer at the Monroe Birthplace up in Westmoreland County. And once he became retired, he's become very involved up there, doing all kinds of things, including being a docent and all the way to cutting grass, I understand. Yes. So we're really excited that Lenny could be here this evening to tell us all about the James Monroe Birthplace. Thanks so much.
So, the reason I got involved with the Birthplace is because we needed to honor our president. We're fortunate here to have George Washington's birthplace. He was born there and he moved. We're fortunate to have Madison's birthplace. We have Madison's birthplace. So James Madison was delivered in Bowling Green at his grandmother's house. He was the first child for his mom, so she delivered at home with her mom. But Monroe is different. Not only was he born in Westmoreland County, but he was there until he was 14 or 16 years of age. The story of Monroe is a story of Northern Neck. His ancestors came from either northwestern England, Northumberland, or he came from Scotland. The Scots don't know anybody named Monroe. The folks in Northumberland said, he's not from my neighborhood, but according to all family heritage, that's where they claim to be from. Genetically, they found studies that perhaps his ancestors were from Austria-Hungary. At any rate, he comes to, our great-grandfather comes to America, and instead of going to Jamestown and the strong Episcopalian, Anglican church doctrines, he chooses to go to St. Mary's in Maryland. He didn't quite fit in with that population either. He and probably 10 other people were tradesmen trading with the Indians. They were, merchants. That didn't go well with a population where he didn't observe the Christian holidays either. So a large number of them moved into the Northern Neck. For folks around this area, Maryland is just across the water. You could say the closest hospital to my house is in Annapolis. The closest naval hospital is Annapolis. Yes, you gotta go all the way around Chesapeake Bay to get there. If you have a boat, it's close by. When I go to Westmoreland County, I'm going to King George, it's just across one little bridge, and I'm at St. Mary's. I'm at Leonard Town. By boat, it was not a big jump for them to say, I'm moving from Lexington Park, area, across the Potomac to Northern Neck to the Westmoreland area. So this is roughly in the 1650s. The Washingtons had already been there for about a good 20, 30 years before that. And the great-grandfather acquired 50 acres. I believe it was from Lord Fairfax's titles, it may have been from the King's charters. But for every person he brought in, he got additional land. And by the time it comes down to Spence Monroe, James Monroe's father, they've got 500 acres of land. And in perspective, the Birthplace site we have now is roughly 10 acres. So you've got to think everything that's on the west side of Monroe Bay, all the way across to St. Peter's Parish, the Washington Parish Church in Oak Grove, was all their property. And one of my friends is doing archaeological digs at Monroe Campground, and they're finding Andrew Monroe's home site, etc. So they were well established in that area. Maybe 25 families were established within that area, and everybody was closely connected. The site was where he was born and raised and grew up. His mother passed away when he was a youngster. His father passed away when he's a teenager. His mother's side of the family was from Fredericksburg. His grandfather was an architect in Fredericksburg. His uncle was the judge in Spotsylvania. By contrast, his father was a cabinet maker. His grandfather was a farmer. His great-grandfather was a farmer and traded with the Indians. So when Spencer Monroe built this house, he built a nicer house than most middle-class skilled artisans, tradesmen would have. So this is a better than middle-class home we have here. Like I say, his mother passed away, his father passes away. He goes to live with his uncle up in Fredericksburg area. He goes off to college at William & Mary, and within the first year of being at college, he's 17 years old in college, fluent French, Spanish, Latin, mathematics, all that good academic skills. It's 1775. The governor leaves the palace in Williamsburg. He moves, Dunmore moves down to a ship off the harbor in Norfolk, Elizabeth River, and the college guys go over to the governor's mansion and raid it, get the munitions, and donate it to the local militia. Not the kind of thing you need to be doing as a freshman in college. His uncle, meanwhile, is on the House of Burgesses, and he calls up, or I guess they called it, connected to George Washington, and said, your old neighbor, he needs some help. He's a nice young man, lots of potential. Can we get him up there, work with you? And it ties him to him. Nowadays, how many times do we tell someone, you need to join the military and grow up? You need some order in your life. That's about where Monroe was at that time. So he goes up there, fluent. Washington, he's a surveyor, he's got education, but not quite the same kind as Monroe. Monroe is able to connect with the French and Polish volunteers. He speaks enough German to get through. Another young man, he's 18 at this point, another young man who's 19 years old, named Marquis de Lafayette, comes over. Lafayette speaks French. He's not very good at English. So the two of them become lifelong buddies, whether it's the Battle of Trenton, where Monroe is injured, whether it's the Brooklyn Heights, whether it's the Fort Washington, White Plains, New York area. They're together during all those campaigns, developing a lifelong friendship. When Monroe gets injured, he gets a gunshot wound through his right subclavian. He loses blood supply and nervous use of the right hand. Lots of his pictures show that right hand just hold by his side, and his future presidential pictures. At any rate, so it was decided at that point that Monroe should come down to Virginia and be captain of the state National Guard, the state militia. Washington sends Lafayette down here with the Continental Army to guard the Shenandoah Valley and the western side of Virginia. The two of them were young men who showed promise, worked together, and now that they're in Virginia, they were campaigning together. It would be Monroe that would defend Norfolk and Craney Island from the British when they invaded the second time. It would be Monroe who would help to slow down the progress of the British forces up to Richmond to try to capture Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson ran back to Charlottesville, it would be Lafayette who would skirmish in the Shenandoah Valley and western side Albemarle region and would keep the British forces more or less focused. They would both be involved at the Battle of Yorktown, the surrender of Yorktown. So, in personal history, he becomes a lawyer while training under Jefferson. He's in charge of the National Guards, state National Guards. Jefferson is the governor at that time. When Monroe becomes a lawyer, he moves up to his uncle's neighborhood, Fredericksburg. His law office is in Fredericksburg. And then, because of his ties with Jefferson, after Jefferson's done his presidency, after Monroe has been an ambassador to France, Spain, and England, after he's done all of his work as Secretary of State, Secretary of War, he comes down to Charlottesville. So if you ever go to Monticello and you pay your $20 entrance fee per person, you go across the street and down a winding road to his place. So Highlands, not quite as big a fancy parking lot, not as big as the visitor center, but it's not as expensive to walk around and see the actual site. So Monroe, even in the legacy, is a common man, respectful of finances, hardworking, and those values, Northern Neck values. He's in a small community where there's 25 families, maybe there's 50 in the church. The way you act, everybody's gonna know about it. The way you behave, it comes out pretty fast. And if somebody needs help, you help your neighbor because you might need their help sometime too. And conservative, ethical, moral values. He was a gentleman. And this shows up when he is a diplomat. He's not the kind of lawyer who's going into court and trying to sue somebody. He's not trying to see how he can use the law to take advantage of anything. He's a mitigator. He's trying to find peace. When he is when he's an assistant, he's one of the cabinet members under Jefferson. Jefferson sends him down to talk to the French about Louisiana Purchase. All Jefferson wanted is, get me New Orleans. I need a port in that region. Don't spend more than $10 million. Monroe comes back and says, I spent 12 million. Instead of 10, I spent 12. Why do you spend so much money? We don't have that money. I also got it at $2 an acre. It includes Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, Tennessee, Ohio, up the Mississippi River, and heading out toward Oregon. Rather than fight with the Spanish about issues we even see today, with an invasion from the south of illegals, troublemakers, whatever, at that time, the Spanish had a colony, a penal colony in Cuba. And when it got too overly populated, they would just take them across the 40 miles of water and dump them in Florida. That doesn't really do much to help folks in the state of Georgia. They're constantly dealing with these troublemakers coming in. Spain was great back in the 1500s. They had colonies all over, colonies, Portugal and Spain had colonies everywhere, but they're in demise at that point. Monroe negotiates to purchase Florida. And the response comes back, why'd you do that? It's cheaper than going to war. That's good common sense. When he was president, he kept something called the Monroe Doctrine. Rather than going to war with everybody, he said, let me lay the cards on the table, let me explain it to you. Russia, you're just across that Bering Strait from Alaska and California. Do not colonize the West Coast. Spain, your days are numbered in this hemisphere. You can pull your forces out of Central America and California and Texas. What he says ends up becoming a doctrine that Reagan used in Grenada, that we've used in Venezuela more recently, and Panama Canal. We had a speaker here, the Muse family was involved in that one. How the Monroe Doctrine became a standard for how we deal with the world. So that's a bit more about the person. let me explain to you more about this birthplace. So the property was passed from one person to another over the 1800s. He sold the property about 1830 or so. It goes from one land speculator to another. They're harvesting trees, they're processing the land. The family had an apple and peach orchard there. Nothing I've heard describes how they turned it back into a plantation to grow vegetables and fruits, an orchard. They harvested the trees, they leveled the land. The place was in such disrepute that by the time of the Civil War, people could see Mount Vernon. People could see Stratford Hall. No one knew where this place was. And that is what protected it. It's back behind Colonial Beach, down the Monroe Bay, following a creek. There's an old road from the 1600s that goes across the back of the property. But there was no History Lane Highway coming through at that point. So it was off the beaten path, and that protected it. Well, about 1910, 1920, a couple of the judges in Westmoreland County started to condemn property for not paying taxes, not maintaining. It was in disrepair. And it took from the early 1900s till roughly the 1980s for a group of First Families of Virginia, Randolphs, Lees, Philip Morris, all those good people, to acquire the funds to start developing this place. The Daughters of the American Revolution, the Sons of the American Revolution, the Spirit of '76, all of those groups came in, private donations, to put up an obelisk on the roadside, and a little roadside sign saying, this is the place where Monroe was born. The foundation, the Monroe Foundation, which is what we see a lot of here, put forth an effort to acquire the land, a 99-year lease, and do archaeological digs to find out where the house actually was, try to find the structures, and recreate a model of the house. The county put in a visitor center, roughly 2019, no, probably close to 2015 or so. The house starts being built around 2019, 2021. Officially, it's been built. We're still working on electricity, and still working on other things in the house, but the structure is there. Yeah, there's a roof, there's walls, it's workable. And we tried to find items from the Monroe family from that time. There is one table in the house that we know Spencer Monroe made. A lot of the things we have in the house is a museum. A lot of it are things that belong to families who date themselves back to the 1800s, who have heirlooms that they do not want to see tossed in the trash heap when they pass away. The kids nowadays, they prefer IKEA. They prefer aluminum chairs. We have nice oak, mahogany, birchwood furniture in the styles of that time, authentic, verified that they truly are of that era. We have china that dates back to the 1820s that family said it's a good holiday china, so after we used it a couple times, we put them in boxes, packed in straw, and they've been in the attic for the past 100 years. And when we finally clean out the old barn one day, we're gonna have a garage sale and $10, I'll sell you a box of old dishes. We have gone through and categorized these things, we've protected them. And so the museum today is a replica of the house that he grew up in. And it's also a place to teach history and to share furniture history. And we do a lot of things to connect with kids. So let me jump around a little bit and share some pictures, then I'll go into more details. So this is part of the visitor center. Let me find my little corner. I'm not good at being up. So this is a visitor center. Here's a model of the house. Like all archaeological things, they do surveying, they map it out, and then they wooden models of it. Here we have Washington, Jefferson, and Monroe. Remember, he's a neighbor from one direction, he's a mentor from the other, and the three of them would work together throughout the formation of America. Wrong way, let's try that way. There's a President's Medal that we have won over time for military service, honoring our presidents. Young picture of him. So here's the house. What you see over here is, not too good, you can window behind us. Two big windows on this side, other side has two big windows, a large living room area. This is not the ballroom of Stratton Hall. This is where Spence Monroe and his neighbors and his friends got together after church on Sunday to play cards, discuss politics, and have family time. This over here is the dining room, equal-sized room. And I pictures inside of a table big enough for Spence and Elizabeth, his parents, his older sister, an orphan girl who was brought into the family, James Monroe and his brothers. And there are tables that fold out in that room to make space so you could have as many as 18 people sit in a room comfortably. This room off to the side was probably a room that was rented out to folks who were trained to work in cabinetry and such. So Spencer Monroe is a skilled artisan. He does cabinetry, woodworking, and folks have to apprentice to learn that skill. People might come to apprentice with him and get room over here, board over there, and work with them in the shop to develop the skills to be a skilled cabinet maker. In front of the house, we have a garden. The lady who does this has a sensory garden for folks who need to have touch feel, a furry leaf, a rough leaf, prickly leaves, whatever, things that smell, ferns, such. Another area is medicinal. Another is just a pretty garden. This is such a pretty site that we have had people come there to do wedding photographs. Get more views of the gardens. So I'm not doing landscaping and cleaning up around there. I'm pulling weeds. My knees still work, and I can still work in the dirt. Lots of pretty pictures of the garden because she's very proud of the garden. So this relates back to the SAR and DAR. We have a plaque in front of the obelisk on the roadside. This is one behind the house. You can see it was dedicated by the Virginia National Guard, Westmoreland County supervisors. A lot of key people have been involved in helping to make this place come to be. This is a view of the visitor center behind the house. The county built this one. And this is where we can have our classes and such. So we were discussing before that you would not bring your drink boxes and pieces of apples and fruit into Stratford Hall and eat it inside the house. You go to the dining hall. Likewise, I've got water fountains, I've got men's and women's bathrooms, I've got air conditioning and such. This is where you set up the folding tables for the kids to do their crafting, not inside the house. Here's an interactive map. So this shows where the road is, the parking lot, where the model house would be, and their concept was to do a drive-through and sort of like when you go to a drive-through zoo, have little signposts along the way to give the history. They also had planned to put rows of trees coming across here. They also plan to go down to the Monroe Creek, tear up the estuary, destroy the wildlife sanctuary that's there, and put up a nature discovery center. Thankfully, that did not happen. Okay? Thankfully, we have the driveway in here. We have in this area the model of the home, the archaeological site is right behind it. this doesn't exist. Now it comes around this way to a parking lot back here for the visitor center. We now have our timeline and 2 walking trails that come back around to the visitor center. So historically, they've had concepts to do all kinds of things. This is a part of the timeline. So what they've done is they have made a path that is not oyster, it's clamshells. Oyster shells break down too fast apparently, so they use clamshells impregnated in the stonework for a timeline that's roughly a half-mile long. And at each of these posts, it says, when Monroe, in 1790, here's what Monroe did. In 1810, he was doing this. In 1820, he was doing that. In 1833, he passes away. And these are things said of Monroe by prominent leaders of our country. This is a really pretty walk to take. I've got on either side birdhouses for bluebird nesting boxes. We've got lots of nature coming through. In high catalogue, we have frogs, we have salamanders, we have rabbits, we have a variety of animals coming through. We're working on the bird population because we also happen to have an osprey sanctuary at Colonial Beach, and the hawks seem to attack our smaller birds. But this is a solution. One of my farmer friends said, don't try to shred up all those briars and such. Let's make a big pile out of them. The small birds can fly into this pile of briars, and it became a bird sanctuary where the big birds can't attack them. So we're doing little things like that to reclaim nature. There's a view of the timeline. These trees I trimmed back. That's where my pole saw comes in. And here's the picnic area. And this path is more or less visible. But one of my buddies who has a front loader on his tractor said, do you need a path? Yes, sir. How do we do it? He said, let me show you. He went up one way, back the other. Between the tread on his tractor and the front loader, we now have a pathway from this side to that side. It's probably about 12 foot wide. And I keep that trimmed so that if you bring small children, they can picnic over here, play in the shade. It's near enough to the walking trail over here and the loop trail, but it's a little cut through for kids to play in the shade. Again, focus on making a livable place. Again, this is where the picnic area is relative to the start of that walk. Okay, so again, welcoming kids. One of our volunteers is an artist who does a lot of 3D sculpting. So he made a little bust of Monroe and was putting them around the site for folks to keep as a souvenir. But they cost about $10 to $15 each to make. It gets a little expensive. So now we have geocache. Anybody know what geocache
Yes.
is? So by putting them out as a geocache, and then they bring their little tokens back to the visitor center, we can give them one of these. Because the nature kids, they'll get their goodie bag out and try to grab them all. That's not fair to other kids coming by. So one of our volunteers has done these, and now we can pass these on to young visitors. This is a day of colonial fun. So we do a lot of events. This was a year ago. I forget. We do a lot of stuff there. So this one was a year ago when we were doing guided tours, reenactments and such. And so if one of my volunteers does fiber crafting, working with knitting, with making yarn, with weaving and such, she set up a booth and a tent and showed folks about crafting. And another person showed how to make candles. And one of the fellows does colonial reenacting as a medical person, not me. And so he set up a tent and displayed surgical tools and healthcare from the colonial era. By having all those little booths and tents around the visitor center area, while the speakers were set up in the front of the house, it made for a fun full day's activity. And after that, they had refreshments. But it's just a fun chance, and we enjoyed, opening up the place to people and doing fun things. This would be the tents we had last fall. We'll be doing this again, by the way. I got literature, please take literature, I got more to pass out. We celebrate Monroe's birthday at his grave in Richmond, Hollywood Cemetery. Not my idea. We celebrate his life at his birthplace in October, which coincides with when he was shot at Trenton. Again, not my plans, but that's how it works out. So if the place opens up to tourism officially in April, the season ends officially before Halloween, we'll have a big fair at that time. So here's the table that my friend set up for first date. Yep, this was an art thing she set up. This was an artist that set this one up. And there was all of our chairs for the speakers. And we'll get everybody from a representative of the governor's office to a speaker of the House to board of supervisors to Mayor Schlick from Colonial Beach. We get lots of dignitaries coming out to this one. And it's becoming more and more popular. We're now starting to see DAR from Maryland, from Southern Maryland coming to this. So it's becoming quite the place to be. Excellent speeches, excellent programs. It's always inspirational. I mean, I mentioned before, we have a rapport with Highlands. About 4 or 5 years ago, I think it was for a while, I guess. 4 or 5 years ago, the director for their education service came up there and was our featured speaker. So yes, we all work together that way. That's my workshop, that's my shed. I got my work done. That's where the tractor is, that's where the shovels and the wheelbarrows and all good stuff. It allows us to do this. Lots of wreath laying. And that was showing how we did the spinning wheels, dressed in costume, explain to kids about making stuff at home, because it's very probable that Monroe's family, when they weren't making food in the dining room, had knitting needle, had weaving and looms set up in that dining area. Well, let's show this one. So not going forward with this, but yeah. Oh, and youth. So for this particular program, we had the Rainbows for Girls of a Sonic Youth Group come out and help us with setting up chairs and greeting, passing out programs, and also enjoying lots of good food. Now, this is a lot about that particular thing. Let me skip over something different, though. So let's do a tour of the house. And if I'm talking too much about something, if you need change topics, let me know, because I can talk about all this stuff. Okay, so here we are, a picture of the entrance of the house. As you come into the house, you see the staircase going up. You'll notice that the stairs are extra wide, and the stairs are not extremely tall. At that time, conservation of space, they had really steep steps, and a lot of them had a staircase going across one of the walls to the second floor. Spencer Monroe is a skilled woodworker. Inconsistent with his skill level, we have a suspended staircase. We have extra wide to accommodate the broader dresses. We have a gradual rise of a platform and then up to the next level. If the adults are down in this area, the social room or in the dining area, the kids can be up here on this platform between the 2 bedrooms. The kids can play and be heard but not seen. Twisted how I did when I was growing up. This is a picture of our living room. And this corner cabinet, I know because I had started about a year ago, was truly the 1720s. The only thing new about it was 2 pieces of wood needed to be replaced on it. And all these panes are the pressed glass from that era. We had to go to Philadelphia to get the glass for that. And this is where we get to display some of our archaeological finds. So the Monroe Foundation claimed the place back in the 1980s and called in the College of Murray to do an archaeological dig. The things they found showed us where the footprint was for the house, approximately where the kitchen would have been, approximately where there would have been at least one or a couple of wells in the grounds. And then all the things they found, all the artifacts, are in boxes at the College of Murray, not on site. But there are things we find as we're doing groundskeeping, as we're working, as I'm pulling up saplings that don't need to be where they're at. They're invasive species. And one of our volunteers is an archaeologist. She cleans it, she documents it, she touches base with her specialist, and then we display them in this cabinet. So there are pieces of archaeological artifacts found on the birthplace that we're now displaying in this cabinet. So how do we know about the house? The ad to sell the house is listed over here. About 500 acres, keep from about 100 acres at most now. Perfectly level, rich land, oak timber, joins a creek in the marshlands behind the house, or in front of the house. It's got meadows around it, and it's a central passage with several rooms above and below. It also has a kitchen, barn, stables, and other necessary outhouses. And this was an advertisement to sell it in the 1780s. So what we know from this is that there are kitchens, barns, and stables on those grounds. They're not going to be located 5 miles away. Somewhere on the grounds that I currently take care of, we're going to find those things. I was talking to somebody this past week who is an older person, older than me, who remembered her grandmother talking about the carriage rides over to the Monrovia area and picking orchard apples. It's like, where were the orchards? I've been looking all around the grounds that we have at the birthplace, and I'm finding a pear tree behind the visitor center, not finding an orchard. She said, no, you need to go over to where Hall's grocery store is. Before there was a grocery store, there was a neighborhood store that her parents owned, and the field across from that, in front of Monroe, in front of the road going to Monroe campgrounds, that's where the orchard was. So along that roadside, where there's a dilapidated house and there's woodlands, where the county has its dump now, that's where the orchard was. So there's no need to plant an orchard on this piece of property. We need to talk to the county about that dump and replant an orchard along there where the orchard truly was. This is the beauty of the place for me. So these pine trees are extremely tall. There's an old growth forest. It's got mixed growths. I've got oak, maple, I've got gumball trees too. It's a nice mix of an orchard, and you've got some birds that inhabit in this region and other birds that stay closer to the ground. But by cleaning up the walkway over here, pushing back on these lines, by using hedge trimmers to cut back little by little, now when you walk through, you don't feel encroached by all the plants. You feel this open area. People can come there with their croquet, with their frisbees, with their lawn bowl, with their badminton. And I'm glad to see them use it, and they can set up their lawn bowling, and at the end of the day, they gather the stuff, go home. Kids can ride their bicycles now. They can throw a frisbee over there. Just tell them, don't throw the frisbee into the woods because I can't get out for you so easily. But yeah, this is a clip. This right there is now one of my bluebird boxes. So the house is a nicer house than most middle-class folks would have. Typical middle-class homes. think about the Rochester House on the Richmond County, Westmoreland border in Warsaw. It had one big room on the first floor, staircase going up one side, one big room on the second floor. You live on the first floor, you cook on the first floor, you heat on the first floor, there's one fireplace, and the flume goes past the second floor bedroom, and that's how you can heat up from there. This one, he built 5 fireplaces.
Oh, wow.
One in the family social area, one in the dining room area, one in that extra addition for the apprentices, and one in each of the bedrooms. 2 chimneys, 5 fireplaces, central passageway. It's a nicer house than most middle-class artisans would have. But if you know anybody who's a skilled carpenter, of course the last project he does is his own home, but if you can do stuff on your own, you can get a lot more done than if you have to pay somebody to do it. Spencer Monroe did a great job with the molding going around the wall for the chair, the wainscot, it's called wainscot. And these fireplaces, you might tell from the scale of the chairs, these are large fireplaces. Like I say, it's constant projects. One of my friends has re-electrified these. We're putting screens in the chimneys so that stuff doesn't come down the chimneys into the house. All those little things fine-tuned after they built the house, and sort of need to go back and fine-tune it even nicer. Visitor Center, Wreath Lane, and here's my boss, Shelby Chan. What do you say? Monroe Foundation, Birthplace, 70-plus year project, established by the descendants of President James Monroe. Oh yeah, so there is a descendant of James Monroe's daughter who married into the H-O-E family in New York City. He lives up in Boston now, and he comes down once a year to see the condition of his property. He always mauls at how nice we're taking care of it. He encourages to keep on doing a good job, and he'll be back next year. But if it weren't for people like him, we would never have acquired this property. So I've got to give respect to, the Reynolds and, the big names in Virginia history who enabled us to dig in the dirt and plant orchards and have fun out there. So, established a visitor center and completion of the Birthplace. Activities on behalf of the foundation, I wish to thank every person who in their accord continues to perpetuate legacy. Folks like me doing stuff. That's what I was saying. There are more slides, I can't follow my slides, so let's just talk a little bit too. So about a year and a half ago, we started looking at interpreting the history from different perspectives. Northern Neck had a large indigenous Indian population going back 5,000 years. There is a pile of oyster shells in Colonial Beach that was a mound made by the Native Americans who would look for where the rivers come together for the best fishing, and they would harvest there and bring it into Colonial Beach. And there are still women in Colonial Beach doing the same thing today, and they would process the oysters there. There were populations around Nami. So Garner's Produce, the other place, in that neighborhood. The Indians, Native Americans, had cleared a field around there, it's still a field today, so that the deer could come in to graze, and rather than running through the woods trying to find yourself a deer, the deer come to you. And the small games were easier to see in that field. You could see rabbits coming through. They could hunt in a controlled area. And they had a trading post at Nominee Creek. We know that the Native Americans, the indigenous population, from the Iroquois to the Algonquins, from North Carolina up to New York, came through that area, and they had whoop trading stuff, they had pipes that are very distinct. So archaeologists who are experts at clay pipes and such can tell you this one came from this community, not that community, this style. And now that we're putting together more supplies, we'll be able to soon identify thumb impressions on the work. And that's when you get a personal connection with the work. Well, this area was probably populated by less than 10,000 Native Americans, but it was their home. They had small vegetable gardens, they subsist up here, and most of them built closer to the river. Think about the Monkey River further down. The English came in and said, we can make money selling tobacco. And so they took over the fields that the Indians had for growing food, squash, beans, subsistence, and started planting tobacco. And that caused a problem because, as the Native Americans said, I can't eat tobacco. I need my food. There was competition. The English brought pigs with them for food, for fuel, for whatever, pigskins, football, whatever it was. And they let the pigs run wild. And then these pigs running wild are destroying the Native Americans' food sources in the gardens. They take over an area. Anybody knows pigs, they take over a region. Other animals sort of move away. And when the heads of the indigenous population approached the English settlers, the Washingtons, etc., they were told, well, you should put a fence around your gardens. I'm not here to review the history of Bacon's Rebellion or King Philip's War or all those things, but there's a lot of history in the Northern Neck that ties into that. The bottom line for Monroe, James Monroe, is that by the time he is born in the 1750s, Native Americans have either become enslaved, they're dead, or they cross the Chesapeake Bay. Nassawatics, Appomattox, all those Kiptopeaks and Chickatigs, that was the population here that moved across rather than trying to fight over land. So there's a history of indigenous population. One of the goals we had over the past year was to research that indigenous population. And now we've got literature on that as well, to reflect what was here and to try to honor that heritage. Maybe in the future, I'll be able to connect with the Pamunkeys, with the other tribes in this area, Mattaponi, and set up a replica of one of their villages. We have the land, as long as I'm not destroying archaeological dig sites, and share that story. That would give a fuller story of what we experienced in our history. The other part of it is that it's been a white person's history. It's all been about the Lees, the Jeffersons, the Lees, the Washingtons, the Fauntleroys, the old families, the white history. And yes, that's an important history to know. How did Colonial Beach turn into a tourist resort? How did people come down there from New Jersey and New York, buy up this land, and a realtor decides, got this great idea, I'm gonna set up a beach resort close to DC, and it'll bring in Baltimore and DC people, and it's the second largest beachfront resort in Virginia, second largest in Virginia Beach, and he started selling plots of land for bed and breakfasts, for a couple of big old-fashioned hotels. I mean, if you go to Disney World, to the Grand Floridian, that building is what you would have seen in Colonial Beach 130 years ago. So that's good history. But how about the indigenous population? How about the black population? So we know that Monroe's father, in his will, had 8 slaves, indentured servants, whatever. Compare that to the Washingtons, nothing against our president, but they owned not just here in Northern Neck, but also in Stafford, also in Fredericksburg. And if you go to Occoquan, heading up toward DC, that was their family property too. To manage all those plantations, you needed taskmasters, supervisors, you needed housing, you needed clothing, you needed to have your own blacksmith to make all the chains and stuff needed for the farm. The Lees had shipping. They have a pier going out onto the river. They've got a grist mill. People bring their grains in, and they process the grains, they bag it up, and they sell it off to Europe. And they did a lot of good. A fan of what the Lees did in colonial times, but just the Stratford Hall had 300 slaves. So by comparison, we're talking about 8. One of them was Muddy. Muddy was training with Spence Monroe. So Spence Monroe, the dad, and Muddy go up to Fredericksburg to learn how to do cabinetry and woodworking and such. And the contract said, the 2 of us are coming here to learn a trade. We're paying for room and board to learn our trade. And under no situation is money to be used for field work and manual labor. And when they come back down to the birthplace, Muddy has his own residence at the workshop. There was another person who did housework. But these people had names. They weren't just, slave number 1, 2, and 3. And when the estate was broken up, they tried to keep families together. They tried to do all the right things. Keep in mind, Monroe was not wealthy. Monroe was not an aristocrat. He went to college with Murray, very good school, highly educated. He wasn't a Princeton graduate like Madison. He wasn't Ivy League. He wasn't Harvard like Adams. But if you think about your presidents, you got Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe. The ones before them, Washington went to college with Murray too. These men are highly educated, esteemed universities. And Monroe went to State University. Good education. Even today, there's still that proverb about, I may not be Ivy League, but I'm pretty good. And that was where Monroe was coming from. Monroe connected with common people. So part of the story is, I want to share the story of the Native Americans, of the black population, the enslaved population. But I want to put it in context with who were the Monroes. So we have literature about that. We have programs emphasizing black history. We're working along with A.T. Johnson, a museum up in Montrose. It's a Black History Museum, because next to our property is a cemetery from the local black church, and we're trying to preserve the graves. So, anyway, so let's talk things I'm hoping to plan to do. We've got the groundskeeping coming together. As I'm cleaning things up, I'm finding stuff. Archaeology stuff, but also more recent things. At one point, Virginia Highway Department planned that road going around. I'm now discovering where they have their granite posts marking where the sides of the roads were planned to be. As I dig things up, I'm finding compacted gravel, almost like asphalt, going around the grounds. I'm discovering what was going on there in the 1920s. My goal is not to move any of that, but to use that as a landmark to say, okay, 20 feet in front of here is where you find these structures. So using more recent construction there to give us an idea of where other structures are located. As we look at the grounds, I'm noticing that there are some places that are unusually, unnaturally flat. And it didn't just happen today. The trees growing in that area are older trees. It wasn't like somebody 20 years ago had a parking lot there and now young stuff's popped up. That flattened area, most likely, based on where it was relative to the house, is probably where the barn was, or where the storehouse was, or where his shop was. I'm hoping to clear that area of the undergrowth, move some of those fallen trees off to the side, and get friends who do archaeology to scan that area to start to find our structures. I'm into ecotourism. I worked in an office, in a doctor's office, in a hospital. I was inside for hours at a time, but I enjoy the fresh air and gardening. And Debbie can tell you, I did my own grass cutting back when we lived in the city. And so I enjoy being out there with nature, communing with nature. And so we're able to discover the footpath down to the pier. Well, 2005 or so, Boy Scouts had done an Eagle project and built a pier onto Monroe Creek. But the path had long since been lost. So I did my rough reckoning. I sort of found my way down there between the pole saw and the hacksaw and the small chainsaw. I'm cutting down stuff and clearing pathways. My buddies come in and say, let me use my big tools. They can go through with the tractor, they can go through with the tools they use for clearing a field for cattle. They can clear a field so that you have a nice pasture for the horses. Come with those tools, and that tree that was laying across the walkway, cut, shove it over, now you got a nice pathway. I'm discovering piles of gravel that dumped there. Some was used as a county dump. I'm finding gravel that dumped there, I'm using that now to repave the pathways. When you go down, Alice.
Lenny, unfortunately, we're running out of time. What you've described with the James Monroe Birthplace is absolutely amazing, and I can't believe I haven't been there yet.
Yes.
If you could just tell us and everyone when, I understand it's open to the public April through October. Is there a particular schedule when you can, do you have to make an appointment, or how do people visit?
So we're open from April until October, roughly the mid part of October, from 11 o'clock until 4 o'clock on Saturdays and Sundays. Holiday weekend, we're gonna be there even more.
Okay.
Flag days, President's Days, those kind of things, volunteers will be there. In addition, some of our volunteers are elementary school teachers, and they have kids programs. Some of the artists will have a plein air event. So there's a whole calendar of things. If you go to the James Monroe Birthplace Foundation site, they list all these upcoming events.
Okay.
In addition, if you want to come out there, you call the number on the card, one of us will arrange to be there. At least 5 of my volunteers live within 10 minutes. I live about 40 minutes from there, but I can meet a family and give a private tour.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And I think anyone who is here who has further questions can certainly stay and ask you. But thank you so much for giving this presentation. I look forward to visiting. Thank you.
I've got literature, please take some. So we've got information about, and this is a fun thing about it. I mean, all the handouts are good. This one over here really personifies my part of it. Because we've got those nice walkways. But what I like is the pictures on the back of it. This is who we are. This is who we are, okay? It's dog friendly, it's neighborhood walks.
What last year about this time? Great.
It's better than that, gotta come back out.
Yeah.